Lucas Ren wiped grease-stained hands on his worn coveralls, alone in the empty garage that felt less empty than his home. 6 hours since he'd found Rebecca's note. 6 hours of hollow disbelief. Married a failure, she'd written. Deserved better. 5 years together, discarded for the promise of prosperity with someone else. Their son Ethan, gone with her. The unexpected knock startled him. A suited man, incongruous against the backdrop of tools and motor oil. "Lucas Ren, I'm Robert Keller, your Uncle William's attorney." Lucas barely remembered the reclusive uncle who'd passed last year. "There's been a delay in executing his will," the attorney continued, placing a folder on the workbench. "Your uncle left you everything, approximately $500 million. The irony wasn't lost on Lucas. Rich beyond imagination, precisely 1 day too late. The symphony of the garage, pneumatic wrenches, clanging metal, and the classic rock station had always been Lucas Ren's preferred music. He slid out from beneath the '67 Mustang, his fingers blackened with grease, but precise in their movements as they had been for 15 years at Donovan's Auto. "She's purring now," he said, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Timing belt was shot, but I replaced it and adjusted the carburetor. Should run better than when you bought her." The customer, a middle-aged banker in an expensive suit, looked skeptical. "You sure that's all it needed? The dealership quoted me $2,000 for repairs." Lucas shook his head. "They were trying to sell you a transmission rebuild you don't need. Parts and labor, you're at $400 even." Frank Donovan, watching from the office doorway, snorted. "That's why Lucas here's my best mechanic. Could charge double and still be half what those dealership crooks want." The banker studied Lucas's honest face, then nodded. "My father always said, find a mechanic you can trust and never let him go." After the customer left, Frank clapped Lucas's shoulder. "You know, you could have made commission on that transmission job." Lucas wiped down his wrench before returning it to its precise spot in the toolbox. Wouldn't sleep right, charging for work that wasn't needed. As 5 o'clock approached, Lucas washed the day's grime from his hands, the familiar routine a comfort. He'd promised Ethan they'd work on the boys' science project tonight. Maybe they'd grill those steaks Rebecca had mentioned this morning. Simple pleasures at the end of an honest day. What more could a man want? The first sign was the missing coat. Rebecca's beige trench coat, the one she'd splurged on last Christmas, normally hung on the third hook by the door. Lucas noticed its absence immediately, an unexpected void in the familiar landscape of home. "Rebecca?" His voice echoed in the unusual quiet. "Ethan?" The silence that answered felt wrong. Thursday evenings, Ethan would be watching cartoons while Rebecca prepared dinner. The TV was dark, the kitchen empty. "Maybe they went to her mom's," he muttered, but his phone showed no texts or missed calls. In the bedroom, the half-empty closet told the story before he found the note on his pillow. Rebecca's handwriting, normally so precise, seemed hurried and sharp. "I can't do this anymore, Lucas. I married a mechanic thinking you had ambition, that you'd move up, that someday we'd have more than just getting by. It's been 5 years, and you're still in the same garage with the same paycheck, while my college friends live in houses with pools. I deserve better. Ethan deserves better. Don't try to contact us for a while. I'll have my lawyer call yours about arrangements." Lucas read it 3 times, the words refusing to make sense. His hands, the hands that could diagnose an engine by touch, trembled. He dialed Rebecca's number, straight to voicemail. Her mother's phone rang unanswered. In Ethan's room, the dinosaur bedspread remained, but his favorite T-Rex was gone, along with his school backpack and the framed photo of the 3 of them at the beach last summer. Lucas sat on his son's bed, a hollowness expanding in his chest. The room still smelled of the boy's shampoo. "Ethan," he whispered to the empty room, "she took my boy." The doorbell's chime seemed an intrusion, pulling Lucas from the darkness where he sat in the living room. 3 hours had passed since finding Rebecca's note. 3 hours of stunned disbelief cycling into anger and back to disbelief. He almost didn't answer, but some mechanical sense of courtesy propelled him to the door. The man on the porch wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Lucas made in a week. "Mr. Lucas Ren?" The man's voice was professionally modulated. "I'm Robert Keller, with Farnsworth and Associates. I was your Uncle William's attorney." Lucas blinked. "Uncle Will? He passed away last year. May I come in? I have some rather significant information to discuss." In the living room, Keller opened his briefcase with manicured hands. "There's been an unfortunate delay in executing your uncle's will. His estate was complex. More significantly, he left explicit instructions that you weren't to be notified until certain investments matured." Lucas struggled to focus. "I barely knew him. We saw each other at family reunions, maybe." "Nevertheless, you were his sole heir." Keller removed a folder. "Your uncle was an extremely private man. Few people knew the extent of his holdings." "Holdings?" "Mr. Ren, your uncle left you everything. Real estate throughout Texas, controlling interest in 3 tech companies, and investment portfolios that have continued to appreciate. The total value is approximately $500 million. The words hung in the air like something from a dream. Lucas stared at the attorney, then at the documents being placed on the coffee table. "That can't be right." "I assure you it is." Keller's expression softened slightly. "Are you all right, Mr. Wren? You seem distressed." Lucas looked down at Rebecca's note, still clutched in his hand. $500 million. The exact figure hardly mattered. It was more money than he could comprehend. And it had arrived precisely 1 day too late. A bitter laugh escaped him. Perfect timing. Keller looked confused. "Sir?" But Lucas was already thinking of Rebecca's words. "I deserve better." The cruel cosmic joke wasn't lost on him. The mechanic's hands that had never been good enough were now worth a fortune. Lucas sat at his kitchen table, staring at his laptop screen. The bank balance displayed seemed unreal, like a video game score rather than actual money. 8 digits before the decimal point, a number so large his mind couldn't properly grasp it. 3 days had passed since Robert Keller had changed his life with a folder of documents and account information. 3 sleepless nights wrestling with the cosmic joke of timing. "Mr. Wren, is there anything else you need clarification on?" Keller asked from across the table, his tone practiced and patient. "Just, how do I even begin to manage this?" Lucas gestured at the screen. "Your uncle's financial team remains in place. They've done an excellent job for the past decade. You can meet with them next week if you'd like, but there's no rush." Lucas nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. He picked up his phone for the 12th time that morning. "I need to tell Rebecca about this," he said, scrolling to her number. Keller's professional demeanor slipped momentarily. "If I may, Mr. Wren, given your recent separation, I'd advise consulting with a family attorney before disclosing your financial situation." Lucas dialed anyway, straight to voicemail, like the previous 15 attempts. "Rebecca, it's me again. There's something important I need to tell you. Please call me back." His voice sounded hollow in the empty kitchen. He tried texting. "We need to talk. Things have changed. Please call. The message showed delivered but not read, like the others. She has a right to know, Lucas said, more to himself than to Keller. Maybe this changes things. But even as he said it, a quiet voice inside questioned whether money should change what mattered. If love depended on a bank balance, what was it worth? His phone remained silent as the numbers on the screen glowed, meaningless in their abundance. The coffee shop on Main Street had been their spot, his and Rebecca's, during their early dating years. Lucas hadn't planned to visit, but found himself there 2 weeks after she'd left, nursing a black coffee and memories. "Lucas, I thought that was you." He looked up to see Claire, Rebecca's friend from her accounting firm. Her surprise seemed genuine, but discomfort quickly followed. "Hey, Claire, how are you?" She slid into the chair opposite him, clutching her latte. "I'm fine. I didn't expect to see you here. Just needed to get out of the house." He studied her face. "Have you talked to Rebecca?" Claire shifted, avoiding his eyes. "Yeah, a few times." "Is she okay? Is Ethan okay? She won't return my calls." "They're fine. She's adjusting." Claire's hesitation told him there was more. "Adjusting to what, exactly?" Lucas asked, keeping his voice steady. Claire sighed. "Look, I shouldn't be the one telling you this, but she's seeing someone." "Richard Calloway. He owns that development company that's building the new shopping center." The name was familiar from local business news. Old money, political connections. "She left me 2 weeks ago," Lucas said, disbelief evident in his voice. "I think they knew each other before." Claire looked genuinely uncomfortable now. "Through work events. He's been pursuing her for months." "And Ethan? How's he handling his mother's new boyfriend?" "Richard's got this huge house on Lake Cypress. Pool, game room. Ethan seems distracted by all the new stuff." She paused. "Richard gave Rebecca this gorgeous diamond bracelet last weekend. Must have cost a fortune." Each word landed like a hammer blow. Not just abandonment, replacement, immediate and calculated. "I see." Lucas stood, leaving his coffee untouched. "Thanks for being honest." Outside, Lucas leaned against the brick wall, drawing deep breaths. The revelation crystallized something inside him. Rebecca hadn't left because he couldn't provide. She'd left for someone who displayed wealth as status. The distinction suddenly mattered enormously. His phone buzzed with a text from his lawyer about temporary custody arrangements. Looking at it, Lucas felt a strange clarity replacing the fog of confusion. Wealth couldn't buy back what was already broken, but it could build something new. The playground at Riverfront Park bustled with Saturday activity. Lucas sat on a bench, watching Ethan climb the jungle gym. 2 supervised Saturday afternoons per month. That's what the temporary arrangement allowed while the divorce proceedings began. "Dad, look how high I am," Ethan called, waving from the top platform. "I see you, buddy. Be careful," Lucas called back, his heart simultaneously full and breaking. At 7, Ethan seemed adaptable, excited about the playground today, not asking difficult questions. But Lucas noticed shadows beneath his son's eyes, a certain cautiousness that hadn't been there before. When they stopped for ice cream, Ethan grew quieter. "Richard has a swimming pool," he said suddenly, licking his chocolate cone, "and a movie theater in his basement." Lucas nodded, choosing his words carefully. "That sounds pretty cool." "Yeah, but—" Ethan looked down at his shoes. "He doesn't fix stuff like you do. My robot broke, and he just said he'd buy me a new one." Lucas felt a surge of emotion he carefully controlled. Sometimes fixing things takes more time than buying new ones. But there's something special about making broken things work again, don't you think? Ethan nodded enthusiastically. Can we fix my robot next time I come over? Absolutely. Lucas smiled, memorizing his son's face. It's a date. Later that afternoon, Lucas sat across from Patricia Winters, the family attorney Keller had recommended. Her office projected capability and discretion. The temporary arrangement isn't ideal, she acknowledged, reviewing the paperwork. But we can petition for more equitable custody once the divorce proceedings begin in earnest. Lucas nodded. And what about my financial situation? For now, I recommend discretion. Ms. Ren left citing financial dissatisfaction. If her new relationship is as recent as you indicate, this could affect the court's perspective on abandonment. Lucas considered this. I don't want to use money as a weapon. Not a weapon, Mr. Ren. A tool for creating stability for your son. Patricia's expression softened slightly. What do you want to do with your inheritance? The question had haunted Lucas for 2 weeks. Looking out the window at the city skyline, he suddenly saw possibilities beyond his personal pain. I want to build something meaningful, something that helps people like me, regular folks who work hard but get overlooked. He turned back to Patricia. And I want to create the best possible home for my son for whenever he's with me. Then that's where we start. She made a note in her file. Not with revenge or reconciliation, but with purpose. The word resonated. Purpose. Not winning Rebecca back or punishing her betrayal, but building something worthwhile from the ruins of what was lost. For the first time since finding that note on his pillow, Lucas felt the fog lifting. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now he could see it. The executive conference room of Ren Enterprises bore little resemblance to the garage where Lucas had spent 15 years of his life, yet his hands still carried faint traces of motor oil beneath the nails, a reminder he deliberately maintained. The acquisition of Meridian Manufacturing gives us 3 more facilities across the Midwest, explained Michael Chen, head of operations, and one of Lucas's first hires. Their equipment is solid, but their management was letting quality slip. Lucas studied the projections on the wall screen. 18 months since he'd established Ren Enterprises, and already they employed over 2,000 people across 7 states. What's their current workforce situation? Lucas asked. They were planning layoffs before we stepped in, Chen replied. About 30% of the floor staff. Cancel those plans, Lucas said immediately. Instead, implement the quality training program we developed at the Dallas plant. Let's see what happens when people are given the tools to succeed rather than pink slips. Eliza Ramirez, his CFO, raised an eyebrow. That's a significant expense up front. And one that's paid off at every other acquisition, Lucas countered. People who feel secure do better work. I've been on the other side of that equation. The team nodded, familiar with Lucas's philosophies by now. His approach wasn't standard for a suddenly wealthy businessman, focusing on established manufacturing businesses that served working-class communities, improving conditions rather than gutting for profit. After the meeting, Lucas walked the halls of the headquarters he'd established in a refurbished factory building rather than a downtown high-rise. Employees greeted him by name. He'd made a point of knowing theirs as well. In his office, he reviewed the latest initiative, a training program for mechanics and trade workers, providing certifications and pathways to small business ownership. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built an empire helping others achieve the modest success that had once seemed beyond his reach. His phone buzzed with a reminder about Ethan's weekend visit. Lucas smiled, closing the reports. For all the satisfaction his business brought, nothing compared to the growing relationship with his son, Dad. "I'm here." Ethan's voice echoed through Lucas's home, no longer just a weekend visitor, but a frequent and enthusiastic presence. The court had recently expanded Lucas's custody to alternating weeks, a victory that meant more than any business acquisition. Lucas emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Hey, buddy, perfect timing. Pizza dough is just about ready for toppings." At 9, Ethan had grown taller in the 2 years since the separation, his face losing some of its baby roundness. He dropped his backpack by the door, a habit Rebecca would have corrected immediately, and raced to the kitchen. "Can we make the 4-cheese one again?" Ethan asked, already washing his hands at the sink without being reminded. "Absolutely, and I picked up those spicy peppers you liked last time." Their routine had evolved naturally: Friday night homemade pizzas, Saturday morning cartoons, afternoon projects in the workshop Lucas had set up in the garage. Simple pleasures that required time, not money. Later, as they sat on the back deck eating their creation, Ethan grew quieter. "Something on your mind, bud?" Lucas asked. Ethan poked at a pepperoni. "Mom and Richard were fighting again before I left." Lucas kept his expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that. That must be hard to listen to." "They don't know I can hear them. It's about money stuff." Ethan looked up. "Richard's not home much anymore. Mom gets really mad." Lucas absorbed this information carefully. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't care if he's not there." Ethan shrugged. "But Mom gets all dressed up to go out and tells me to order whatever I want for dinner. The housekeeper watches me, but she doesn't speak much English." "You're alone a lot?" Lucas kept his tone conversational, though concern bloomed inside him. "It's okay. I have my games." Ethan brightened. "But I like it better here." "You're always home when I'm here." "That's because you're the most important person in my life," Lucas said simply. "Work can always wait." Later, when Ethan was engrossed in a movie, Lucas checked the calendar. Despite his growing business, he'd structured everything around Ethan's schedule. When his son was with him, meetings were rescheduled, trips postponed. Watching Ethan laugh at the screen, Lucas felt a pang of gratitude mixed with concern. His son was flourishing in their time together, but what was happening during those other weeks? As Sunday evening approached, Ethan's usual enthusiasm dimmed. Standing by the door with his backpack, he asked the question that had become a pattern. "Do I have to go back tonight? Can't I stay one more day?" Each time, it broke Lucas's heart a little more. "Dad, I forgot to tell you," Ethan said during breakfast Monday morning, having stayed an extra night with Lucas's request for a custody adjustment pending. "Richard's company isn't building the big mall anymore. Mom was really upset." Lucas glanced up from his coffee. "The Westlake development? It's been canceled?" "Yeah. Mom said it's a cash flow problem, whatever that means." This caught Lucas's attention. Richard Callaway's Callaway Development Group had been the talk of the business community with their ambitious Westlake project, a luxury shopping center that had been prominently featured in the business press. After dropping Ethan at school, Lucas made a call to his financial analyst from the car. "Marcus, what do you know about Callaway Development's current situation?" "Funny you should ask," Marcus replied. "I was just reviewing some industry reports. There are whispers they're overextended. The Westlake project has been postponed indefinitely, which is usually code for funding fell through." "Can you dig deeper? Discreetly?" "Already on it. Their last 2 projects came in significantly over budget. Word is they've been borrowing heavily to maintain appearances. I'll send you the preliminary report by end of day." Back at his office, Lucas found himself distracted during meetings. Rebecca's words from her goodbye note echoed in his mind. "I deserve better. Ethan deserves better." The report arrived late afternoon, more concerning than Lucas had anticipated. Callaway Development had leveraged their properties extensively, betting on continued market growth that had recently stalled. 3 major investors had quietly pulled out. Lucas sat at his desk, piecing together implications. Richard Callaway's financial foundation was crumbling, yet based on Ethan's comments, the lifestyle hadn't changed. Expensive outings, housekeepers, maintaining appearances. His phone rang. Patricia Winters, his family attorney. "I've received concerning information from Ethan's teacher," she began without preamble. "He's been falling asleep in class, mentioning being alone at night. The school counselor spoke with him yesterday." Lucas closed his eyes briefly. "I know. He's been telling me bits and pieces. Rebecca's been leaving him with minimal supervision while maintaining their social calendar." "This strengthens our case for primary custody," Patricia said. "But there's more. Richard Callaway's financial situation is deteriorating rapidly. If they're living beyond their means—" "They are," Lucas confirmed. "And from what I'm seeing, it's about to get much worse." After hanging up, Lucas stared at the report on his screen. The implications were clear. Rebecca had abandoned stability for perceived prosperity, and now that prosperity was vanishing. Meanwhile, Ethan was caught in the middle, increasingly neglected as Rebecca and Richard struggled to maintain appearances. Lucas closed the file, a steely resolve forming. His son's well-being couldn't wait for Richard Callaway's financial house of cards to completely collapse. The time for passive observation was over. The news alert flashed across Lucas's phone as he reviewed quarterly reports in his home office. Breaking: Callaway Development Files for Chapter 11, Bankruptcy Protection. Almost immediately, his private line rang. It was Marcus, his financial analyst. "I assume you've seen the news," Marcus said without preamble. "It's worse than we anticipated. The Westlake project wasn't just postponed. It was the first domino. 3 more projects have been halted mid-construction." Lucas swiveled his chair to face the window, processing this information. "How bad is the fallout?" "Total liabilities estimated at over $40 million. Assets won't cover half that. They've laid off 80% of their staff as of this morning." "Any mention of Richard Callaway personally?" "That's where it gets interesting," Marcus continued. "He commingled business and personal finances extensively. The bankruptcy will almost certainly extend to his personal assets. The lakefront house, vehicles, everything." Lucas glanced at the framed photo of Ethan on his desk, taken during their fishing trip last month. The boy's smile conveyed a hard-won trust that had taken 3 years to build. "What about their current residents?" Lucas asked, keeping his voice measured. "Already listed as collateral against business loans. According to my sources, they're facing imminent eviction. Callaway has been dodging creditors for weeks." Lucas pulled up his calendar, checking when Ethan was due to return to his care. 3 days from now, if Rebecca adhered to the schedule. "One more thing," Marcus added. "The bankruptcy filing includes mention of unpaid personal staff, housekeepers, personal assistants. Seems they haven't been paid in over 2 months." The implication was clear. The woman Rebecca had entrusted with Ethan's care was likely no longer present. "Send me everything you have," Lucas said. "And keep me updated on any developments." After hanging up, Lucas opened his laptop and drafted an email to Patricia Winters, his family attorney. The situation had moved from concerning to potentially dangerous for Ethan. Rebecca had built her new life on Richard's apparent success. With that foundation crumbled, what desperate measures might she take? Lucas had maintained his relative anonymity in business dealings, keeping his fortune largely private. Rebecca likely had no idea of the resources at his disposal, a strategic advantage he'd maintained on Patricia's advice. Now, the situation had eerily reversed. Rebecca had left seeking financial security and status, only to find herself potentially destitute. Lucas felt no satisfaction in this development, only concern for his son caught in the turbulence. He picked up the phone again, this time to call Patricia directly. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about protection. Ethan's arrival 3 days later confirmed Lucas's worst fears. The boy's clothes were wrinkled, his backpack missing, dark circles shadowing his eyes. He clung to Lucas at the door, a behavior he'd outgrown a year ago. "Hey, buddy," Lucas said gently, kneeling to eye level. "I'm really happy to see you." In the kitchen, Lucas prepared Ethan's favorite hot chocolate, adding extra marshmallows. The familiar routine seemed to calm the boy, who sat hunched at the counter. "Mom said to tell you I need to stay longer this time," Ethan finally said, staring into his mug. "She has to go on a trip." Lucas kept his expression neutral. "Did she say how long?" Ethan shook his head. "She was crying a lot. Richard left. He took his big car and a suitcase." "I see." Lucas sat beside his son. "That sounds scary." "The electricity stopped working yesterday." Ethan's voice was small. "Mom said it was a mistake, but we couldn't turn on any lights. Where did you sleep last night?" "In Mom's car." Ethan looked up, his eyes filling with tears. "She said it was like camping, but it was cold." Lucas fought to maintain his composure, his hand steady as he brushed Ethan's hair from his forehead. "You must have been brave." "Mom said not to tell you about the car." The boy's lip trembled. "Or about the men who came to the house yesterday. They were loud." "What men, Ethan?" "They had papers. Mom yelled at them to go away. She said they couldn't make us leave." A tear slid down Ethan's cheek. "Are we homeless now, Dad?" The question broke something in Lucas. He gathered his son into his arms, feeling the boy's thin frame tremble against his chest. "No, Ethan, you will never be homeless. You have a home right here, always." "But what about Mom?" The question carried a weight beyond Ethan's years. Concern for his mother despite his own fear, a child's instinct to protect a parent even when they've failed to protect him. "Your mom is going through a hard time," Lucas said carefully. "But we'll make sure she's okay too. That's what families do, even when they live in different houses." Later, after Ethan had showered and fallen asleep in his room, his permanent room, not a weekend accommodation, Lucas sat on the edge of his own bed, hands clasped tightly together. The anger he felt wasn't toward Rebecca, but toward the situation she'd created. Ethan sleeping in a car, utility shutoffs, eviction notices. All while Lucas had resources that could have prevented his son's suffering. He'd respected the boundaries of their separation, maintained his privacy, allowed Rebecca to chart her own course. But that approach had failed to protect Ethan. Lucas reached for his phone. There were calls to make, arrangements to set in motion, but first, he needed guidance beyond legal strategy. This was about his son's emotional well-being, not just his physical safety. The Family Services building was unassuming, its beige exterior belying the critical work conducted inside. Lucas had secured an appointment through Patricia's professional connections, explaining the urgency of Ethan's situation. "Mr. Ren?" A woman approached in the waiting area, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Collins, Family Crisis Counselor. Thank you for coming in." Sarah was perhaps mid-30s, with attentive green eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put Lucas at ease. Her handshake was firm, professional. "I appreciate you seeing us on short notice," Lucas said, following her to a modest office. Patricia briefed me on the general situation, Sarah explained, gesturing to a chair. But I'd like to hear directly from you what's happening with Ethan. Lucas detailed the events of the past few days. Ethan's arrival, his revelations about sleeping in the car, the eviction notices, Rebecca's apparent unraveling. I've arranged temporary accommodations for Rebecca, he explained. An apartment, prepaid for 6 months. She doesn't know it was from me. I just couldn't let Ethan worry about his mother being homeless. Sarah nodded, making notes. That shows tremendous compassion, Mr. Ren. Many in your position might feel justified in letting natural consequences unfold. Ethan loves his mother. Her suffering becomes his suffering. Lucas leaned forward. But I can't let him return to that environment. He needs stability. I agree. Sarah set down her pen. Based on what you've described, there are grounds for emergency custody modification. The court typically moves slowly, but situations involving potential homelessness and utility shutoffs qualify as emergencies. What about Ethan's emotional state? He's confused, worried about his mother, feeling responsible in ways no child should. Sarah's expression softened slightly. That's why I recommend counseling alongside the legal process. Ethan needs a safe space to process these changes. She hesitated. Would you be open to family sessions, you, Ethan, and eventually perhaps his mother, when she's more stable? Absolutely. Whatever helps him. Sarah studied him for a moment. Most non-custodial parents in your financial position hire teams of lawyers and fight from a distance. Your approach is refreshingly centered on Ethan's well-being rather than winning. I was a mechanic for 15 years, Lucas said simply. I know the difference between fixing something and just replacing it. Relationships can't be bought or forced. They need to be repaired carefully. Something shifted in Sarah's professional demeanor, a subtle recognition, perhaps, of an unexpected depth. I think we can help Ethan navigate this, she said, her voice warm, and I'd like to meet with him tomorrow, if possible. As they finalized the details, Lucas felt a cautious optimism. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time since discovering Ethan's circumstances, he felt they had direction. At the door, Sarah handed him her card. Call any time, day or night. Children in transition sometimes have difficult moments when least expected. Their hands brushed briefly during the exchange, a momentary contact that, in another context, might have gone unnoticed. But in the midst of crisis, the simple human connection carried unexpected weight. Thank you, Lucas said, meaning it completely. Lucas sat in his car outside the community center, hands still gripping the steering wheel, though the engine was off. The flyer Sarah had given him, Single Fathers Support Group, Thursdays 7 p.m., lay on the passenger seat. He'd almost talked himself out of coming 3 times. What did he need a support group for? He had resources, stability, professional help for Ethan. Yet Sarah had been insistent. Being a single father isn't just about logistics. It's an emotional journey, too. With a deep breath, he grabbed the flyer and headed inside. The meeting room was arranged in a circle of folding chairs. Coffee and store-bought cookies sat on a side table. 5 men of varying ages were already seated, conversations quieting as Lucas entered. "Welcome," said a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair. "I'm Jim, the facilitator. First time?" Lucas nodded, taking the nearest empty chair. "Lucas Ren." "We usually start with introductions," Jim explained. "Just first names, how many kids, how long you've been solo parenting. No pressure to share more than you're comfortable with." The introductions moved around the circle. Dave, 2 daughters, widowed 3 years. Miguel, 1 son with special needs, divorced 2 years. each story different, yet connected by a common thread. When Lucas's turn came, he kept it simple. Lucas, one son, Ethan, divorced 3 years, but only recently got primary custody. The transition period is rough, offered a younger man named Tyler. My ex moved across the country. Suddenly, I was handling everything from school lunches to anxiety attacks. Ethan's been having nightmares, Lucas found himself saying. His therapist says it's normal after what he's been through, but when he cries out at night, he hadn't meant to reveal so much, yet the words tumbled out naturally. My daughter was the same after her mom left, Dave said. What helped us was a bedtime routine that never changes. Consistency became her security blanket. Others shared similar experiences, practical advice without judgment, understanding without pity. Lucas realized they saw him not as a wealthy businessman or a divorced husband, but simply as a father trying his best. The hardest part, Miguel said, during a discussion about co-parenting, was accepting I couldn't control my ex's choices, only my response to them. Lucas nodded, thinking of Rebecca's situation. How do you explain to a child why their mother makes destructive decisions? You don't, Jim said gently. You just love them consistently enough that they learn not all relationships are unpredictable. As the meeting wound down, Lucas found himself exchanging phone numbers with Tyler, whose son was close to Ethan's age. Driving home, Lucas felt something he hadn't expected, a lightening of a burden he hadn't fully acknowledged. These men understood challenges money couldn't solve. Midnight fears, the weight of being both parents, the struggle to heal wounds you didn't inflict. For the first time since Rebecca left, Lucas felt not just capable, but truly understood. The Ren Foundation for Family Stability, Lucas announced, unveiling the presentation title on the conference room screen. His executive team exchanged curious glances. This wasn't on their regular agenda. For the past month, I've been developing a concept that merges our business expertise with a community need I've experienced firsthand, Lucas continued. Single-parent families face challenges that extend beyond financial hardship, though that's certainly significant. He clicked through slides showing statistics, educational outcomes for children in unstable homes, employment challenges for single parents, housing insecurity. What are you proposing exactly? Asked Eliza, his CFO, always direct. A comprehensive support system. 3 components. First, affordable housing developments specifically designed for single-parent families with built-in childcare facilities. Second, employment training and flexible work opportunities. Third, community support services, from legal aid to counseling. Michael Chen leaned forward. This is personal for you. Lucas nodded. It is, but it's also good business. These developments can be profitable while maintaining affordability. The employment program creates a talent pipeline for our companies, and the community impact aligns with our corporate values. Discussion flowed as his team engaged with the concept, challenging assumptions, refining the model. Lucas had spent weeks researching, incorporating insights from the support group and conversations with Sarah. Implementation timeline? Eliza asked, already thinking practically. Pilot program within 6 months, 3 locations initially. As the meeting concluded, his COO lingered. This isn't just business for you, is it? Lucas smiled slightly. The best business decisions rarely are. 2 weeks later, Lucas stood in an empty warehouse that would become the first family resource center. Contractors measured spaces that would transform into childcare rooms, a legal aid office, counseling spaces, and a communal kitchen. Jim, from the support group, had agreed to consult on programming. He walked the space with Lucas, pointing out possibilities. "We could hold the meetings here," Jim suggested. "Expand to include groups for the kids, too. Healing happens better in community." Tyler had introduced Lucas to 3 other fathers who needed employment with flexible scheduling. They now had interviews with Ren Enterprises subsidiaries. What had begun as Lucas's personal response to crisis was evolving into something larger, a systematic approach to problems he now understood intimately. That evening, visiting the construction site of the first housing development, Lucas watched the sun set over the framework of what would become homes for 20 families. He felt a deep satisfaction unlike any business achievement had provided. The foundation wasn't charity. It was transformation, turning his own painful experience into a pathway for others. The irony wasn't lost on him. Rebecca had left seeking material success, while he had found purpose by helping others achieve basic stability. Some broken things couldn't be fixed, but they could become building materials for something new and stronger. "Ethan's progress has been remarkable," Sarah said, closing her case notes folder. They sat in her office for their regular monthly review, the late afternoon sun slanting through the blinds. "His teacher reports he's more engaged, his sleep has improved, and he's forming healthy peer relationships." Lucas nodded, relief evident in his expression. "The nightmares have almost stopped, and he's talking about the future again, making plans, looking forward to things." "That's significant." Sarah's professional tone carried genuine warmth. Children in transition often live only in the present, afraid to hope. Their meeting had officially concluded, yet neither made a move to end it. After months of working together, their interactions had developed an easy rhythm, professional but increasingly comfortable. "I wanted to thank you," Lucas said, "for suggesting the support group. It's been unexpectedly important." Sarah smiled. "Sometimes the problems we think are unique to us are actually quite universal." "The foundation work is moving forward," he continued. "We break ground on the second housing development next month. I'd value your perspective on the counseling services component if you have time." She glanced at her watch. "My last appointment canceled." "I was just going to grab coffee at River's Edge before heading home. We could discuss it there if you'd like." The coffee shop was quieter than Lucas expected for a Thursday evening. They found a corner table, professional discussion gradually shifting to more personal topics as their coffee cooled. "How did you get into this work?" Lucas asked. Sarah's fingers traced the rim of her mug. "My parents divorced when I was 8. The counselor who helped me through it became my role model. 20 years later, here I am." "Using your own experience to help others," Lucas observed. "We have that in common." "I noticed that about you from our first meeting," Sarah admitted. "Most people with your resources hire others to handle difficult situations. You lean in." "Mechanic's habit," he said with a slight smile. "Can't fix what you won't touch." Her laugh was genuine, a sound he'd come to appreciate over their months of collaboration. "Is that your life philosophy?" "Becoming so, I suppose." Their eyes met briefly. "What's yours?" "That healing doesn't mean erasing the damage. It means building something new around the broken places." She hesitated. "Like kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing pottery with gold. The breaks become part of the beauty." The metaphor lingered between them, carrying meaning beyond professional insight. Outside, streetlights flickered on as daylight faded. Their conversation continued, meandering through books they'd both read, places they hoped to visit someday, stories of Ethan's latest adventures. When they finally stood to leave, the professional boundaries that had defined their relationship for months had subtly shifted. Not abandoned, but expanded to include something new. At her car, Sarah turned to him. This was nice, the change of scenery. It was, Lucas agreed. The moment held possibility, neither rushing to define it. I'm making lasagna for Ethan tomorrow night, he said finally. He mentioned you like Italian food. We'd enjoy the company, if you're free. Her smile carried warmth beyond professional courtesy. I'd like that very much. Under the gentle glow of the parking lot lights, they stood at the threshold of something neither had been looking for, yet both now recognized. Not a replacement for what was lost, but something entirely new, built on understanding, respect, and the shared journey of helping a child heal. Lucas spread the documents across Patricia Winter's desk. School reports, counselor evaluations, financial records, and testimonials from Ethan's teachers. 4 years had passed since Rebecca left, and the evidence of her continued instability was substantial. The pattern is clear, Patricia said, reviewing the timeline. Multiple relocations, inconsistent school attendance, emotional distress, documented by 3 separate counselors. She looked up at Lucas. We have more than enough for a primary custody petition. Lucas nodded, his resolve firm. I've tried to be patient, to give Rebecca time to stabilize. But Ethan can't wait any longer. Last week, he asked if he could just stay with me permanently. Sarah, sitting beside him in her capacity as Ethan's counselor, added her professional perspective. Ethan's academic performance improves dramatically during his time with Lucas, then regresses when he returns to Rebecca. The emotional toll is significant: anxiety, sleep disturbances, withdrawal. Will testifying be difficult for him? Lucas asked, concern evident in his voice. The judge can interview him privately, Patricia explained. Given his age and the documented history, his preference will carry significant weight. Sarah touched Lucas's arm briefly. You've created a healing environment for him. That's what the court needs to see, not just Rebecca's failures, but your success as a parent. Lucas appreciated the distinction. This wasn't about punishing Rebecca or winning some delayed victory. It was about creating the stability Ethan desperately needed. What about Rebecca's financial situation, he asked. She's in that apartment I arranged, but I know she's struggling. Patricia's expression remained neutral. The petition isn't about finances. It's about parental capability and the child's best interests. We'll include reasonable support provisions. Lucas nodded, remembering the mechanic he once was. Everyone deserves dignity. Later that afternoon, Lucas stood in the courthouse filing office, watching as Patricia submitted the custody modification petition. The clerk stamped the documents, making official what had been true emotionally for some time. Lucas was fighting to become his son's primary guardian. As they left the courthouse, Patricia explained the next steps. Rebecca will be served notice within 5 business days. The hearing will be scheduled approximately 8 weeks out. And Ethan? Current arrangements continue until the hearing. Document everything, every visit, every phone call, every concern. The weight of the decision settled on Lucas's shoulders, not as a burden, but as a responsibility embraced. For years, he had tried to accommodate Rebecca's instability, to shield Ethan from the worst consequences of her choices. The time for half measures had passed. Walking to his car, Lucas felt a sense of clarity. The boy who needed him was worth fighting for, not with anger or vengeance, but with the steady determination that had rebuilt his life from the ground up. Family Court 3 maintained an atmosphere of hushed formality as Judge Eleanor Ramsey reviewed the case files. Lucas sat beside Patricia at the petitioner's table, his suit conservative, his demeanor composed. Across the aisle, Rebecca appeared thinner than Lucas remembered. her once carefully maintained appearance showing signs of strain despite obvious effort. In the matter of custody modification for Ethan James Ren, Judge Ramsey began, we have reviewed extensive documentation from both parties. I'll hear opening statements, then witness testimony. Patricia presented their case methodically. School records showing Ethan's academic improvements during time with Lucas, counselor reports documenting emotional stability in his father's home, character references from teachers and community members. Rebecca's attorney, a public defender assigned when she couldn't afford representation, argued that a mother's bond was irreplaceable and that Rebecca deserved more time to stabilize her situation. When Rebecca took the stand, Lucas was struck by the contrast between the confident woman who had left him and the defensive figure before him now. "Miss Wren, can you explain the 6 residential changes in the past 3 years?" Patricia asked during cross-examination. "Financial necessity," Rebecca replied, tension evident in her voice. "Richard's business collapsed, and finding affordable housing has been challenging." "And the 3 school transfers for Ethan?" "They followed our moves. I always enrolled him immediately." According to school records, there were gaps of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and 1 month. Rebecca's composure wavered. "I was doing my best in impossible circumstances." Lucas maintained a neutral expression, feeling no satisfaction in her discomfort. When his turn came to testify, he focused entirely on Ethan's needs. "My son thrives with routine and stability," he explained. "In my home, he has consistent rules, expectations, and support. His room remains unchanged whether he's there or not, a place that's always his." Judge Ramsey studied him. "Mr. Wren, what accommodations would you make for continuing maternal involvement if granted primary custody?" "I've arranged flexible visitation options, transportation assistance for Rebecca, and neutral meeting spaces when necessary. I want Ethan to maintain a relationship with his mother. That connection is important to him." The most powerful testimony came from Ethan's interview, summarized by the judge, but conducted privately. Ethan expresses a clear preference to live primarily with his father. He describes feeling safe and normal in Mr. Wren's home and worried about Mom when in Miss Wren's care. After 4 hours of testimony, Judge Ramsey delivered her ruling. This court finds compelling evidence that Ethan Wren's best interests are served by modifying the existing custody arrangement. Primary physical custody is awarded to Lucas Wren with structured visitation rights for Rebecca Wren. Across the aisle, Rebecca's shoulders slumped. For a moment, their eyes met, not as adversaries, but as parents who once shared dreams for their child. Lucas saw something unexpected in her expression, relief mingled with the defeat, as though some burden had been partially lifted. Outside the courtroom, Patricia shook his hand. A clear victory, but handled with grace. Lucas watched Rebecca walking alone down the corridor. "There are no winners in these situations," he said quietly, "just different paths forward." "Dad! Sarah! Come see what I built," Ethan called from the backyard workshop Lucas had created for his son's 12th birthday. 5 years had passed since the divorce, 1 year since the custody modification that formalized what had already become their reality. Lucas exchanged a smile with Sarah as they set aside dinner preparations and headed outside. The evening sun cast a golden glow across their home, a modest but comfortable house that had evolved from Lucas's bachelor residence into a true family space. Ethan proudly displayed his latest creation, a handcrafted birdhouse with intricate detailing. "I used that joinery technique you showed me," he told Lucas. "And Sarah, I painted it with the colors you said birds are attracted to." It's beautiful, Sarah said, genuine admiration in her voice. After 2 years of dating Lucas, she had become an integral part of their family, her relationship with Ethan developing naturally from counselor to friend to a maternal figure he increasingly relied upon. "We should hang it by the kitchen window," Lucas suggested, "so we can watch during breakfast." Later, as they gathered around the dinner table, a ritual they maintained regardless of busy schedules, the conversation flowed easily from Ethan's upcoming science fair to weekend plans for hiking at the state park. "Mom called today," Ethan mentioned between bites of lasagna. "She got that job at the accounting firm, the one with benefits." Lucas nodded encouragingly. "That's great news. Sounds like a good fit for her skills." Rebecca had slowly rebuilt her life after the court decision, moving into subsidized housing provided through Lucas's foundation, though she remained unaware of his connection to it. Their co-parenting relationship had evolved into something cordial, if not warm. "She asked if I wanted to go to a movie Sunday afternoon," Ethan continued. "Of course," Sarah said. "We can adjust the hiking schedule." After dinner, as Ethan finished homework in his room, Lucas and Sarah sat on the back porch swing, the comfortable silence of established partners between them. "I've been thinking," Sarah said finally, her head resting against his shoulder. "Dangerous," Lucas teased, earning a gentle elbow to his ribs. "About us." "This." She gestured toward the house encompassing their life together. "It works, doesn't it?" "Better than I ever imagined possible," Lucas admitted. "You know, when Rebecca left, I thought that was the end of family for me. Just Ethan and me against the world." Sarah laced her fingers through his. "Family isn't always what we expect. Sometimes it's what we build from the broken pieces." The porch light illuminated the small velvet box Lucas had been carrying in his pocket for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. Perhaps tomorrow, during their morning coffee, or this weekend, with Ethan's enthusiastic help. Inside, they heard Ethan playing guitar, a hobby Sarah had introduced him to last year. The simple melody drifted through the open window, a soundtrack to the peaceful evening. "I love our life," Lucas said simply. Sarah's smile held everything he needed to know about belonging, about second chances, about the family they had chosen to create together. "So do I," she replied. "Every imperfect, wonderful part of it." The security alert chimed on Lucas's phone during Saturday breakfast. 5 years of peaceful routine had made such interruptions rare at their gated home. "Someone at the main entrance," he said, checking the notification. Sarah glanced up from helping Ethan with his science project, a question in her eyes. Lucas opened the security app, viewing the camera feed. His body tensed. Rebecca stood at the gate, pressing the intercom repeatedly. He hadn't seen her in nearly 8 months since Ethan's last school concert. "It's Rebecca," he said quietly. "Mom?" Ethan looked up, surprise and wariness mingling in his expression. Lucas touched Sarah's shoulder reassuringly as he stood. "I'll handle this." At the gate's intercom panel, Lucas pressed the response button. "Rebecca, this is unexpected." Her face on the monitor appeared strained, makeup carefully applied, but clothing wrinkled. "Lucas, I need to talk to you. Please let me in. Ethan is working on his science project. We weren't expecting visitors." "This isn't about Ethan," her voice sharpened. "It's about you, about this." She gestured wildly at the gates, the security cameras, the expansive property beyond. "When were you going to tell me?" The security guard approached, concern evident. Lucas gestured that he had the situation under control. "Tell you what exactly?" Lucas kept his voice measured. "That you're worth millions, that you own half the commercial real estate downtown, That the foundation providing my subsidized apartment is your company." Her words tumbled out, accusatory and desperate. "I saw the magazine article yesterday. Lucas Ren, the quiet philanthropist. 5 years, Lucas. 5 years you let me struggle while you were—" "While I was what, Rebecca?" The calmness in his voice seemed to unnerve her. "While I was raising our son, building businesses that employ hundreds of people, creating housing for families in need, including yours." She faltered momentarily. "You had no right to keep this from me. I deserved—" "What did you deserve, Rebecca?" Lucas asked, not unkindly. "You left because I was a mechanic with a modest income. You made that choice." "If I had known—" "That's exactly the point." Lucas's tone remained steady. "You would have stayed for the money, not for me, not for our family." Her face crumpled slightly before hardening again. "I want to see Ethan. He's with Sarah right now. This isn't his scheduled visitation day." "Sarah." Rebecca spat the name. "Living in my house, with my husband, my son." "Ex-husband," Lucas corrected gently. "And this was never your house. I built it after you left." The security guard shifted slightly, a reminder of his presence. "I need to discuss this with my family," Lucas said finally. "I'll call you later today." "Lucas, please!" Her voice caught, desperation replacing anger. "I have nowhere else to go. The accounting job fell through. I can't make rent next month." For a moment, Lucas saw the woman he'd once loved, now broken by her own choices. "I'll call you," he repeated, more gently this time. As the intercom went dark, Lucas stood motionless, aware that the life he'd carefully rebuilt now faced its greatest test. "She looked different," Ethan said quietly. The family had gathered in their living room, the abandoned science project on the coffee table, a reminder of their interrupted morning. Lucas sat beside his son on the couch, Sarah across from them in the armchair, her presence steady and calm. "People change," Lucas replied. "Life hasn't been easy for her. She wants to come back, doesn't she?" At 12, Ethan's perceptiveness sometimes surprised them. "Because of the money." Lucas and Sarah exchanged glances. They had never hidden the family's financial status from Ethan, but they had raised him to understand that wealth was a responsibility, not an identity. "Your mother is struggling right now," Sarah said carefully. "Sometimes when people are in trouble, they look to the past for solutions." "She called you my husband," Ethan said suddenly, looking at Lucas. "But you're not married anymore." "No, we're not," Lucas confirmed. "And she said Sarah was living in her house." Ethan's voice took on an edge Lucas rarely heard. "But this was never her house. She left us." "Ethan," Lucas placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "It's okay to be angry, but remember that your mother made the best decision she could with what she understood at the time. She left because we weren't rich enough." The boy's directness cut through pretense. "And now she wants to come back because we are." "People are more complicated than that," Sarah offered gently. "Your mom is probably confused and scared right now." Ethan stood abruptly, walking to the mantel where family photos were displayed. Ethan and Lucas fishing, Sarah and Ethan at his science fair, the three of them hiking, a photo from Sarah and Lucas's wedding 6 months ago. Not a single image included Rebecca. "She's not my real mom anymore," Ethan said, picking up the hiking photo. "Sarah is." He turned, tears welling in his eyes. "Sarah's been here every day. She helps with my homework and comes to all my games and knows how I like my sandwiches cut. Mom only calls on my birthday and Christmas." Lucas moved to his son, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Biology makes someone a parent, but love and presence make someone a mom or dad. Your mother gave you life, and that will always be important. Sarah has helped raise you, and that's equally important. I don't want Mom living here, Ethan stated firmly. I don't want everything to change again. Sarah joined them, creating a small circle of connection. Nothing will change without all of us talking about it first, Ethan. We're a family, and families make decisions together. Your mother needs help, Lucas said carefully, and we can provide that help without disrupting our family. That's what I'm going to talk to her about. Ethan's posture relaxed slightly. You promise she won't live here? I promise. This is our home, yours, mine, and Sarah's. Later, after Ethan had returned to his science project with Sarah's help, Lucas stood at the window, watching them work together. The anger he might once have felt toward Rebecca had long since transformed into something more complex, a mixture of compassion and boundary that came from healing rather than hurt. He picked up his phone and dialed Rebecca's number, clear about the path forward. The following morning, Lucas stood alone at the gate. He had arranged for Ethan and Sarah to visit the Science Museum, ensuring this conversation would happen without an audience. Rebecca arrived in a taxi, stepping out with the careful dignity of someone trying to maintain composure. 5 years had etched lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't conceal. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, approaching the gate that remained closed between them. Lucas nodded. "I've arranged for an apartment in the Riverside complex. It's furnished, with utilities included. The lease is paid for 1 year. Rebecca's expression flickered between gratitude and resentment. "Just like that? Problem solved with money?" "Would you prefer I didn't help?" Lucas asked quietly. "No, She sighed, deflating slightly. "Thank you. But we need to talk about us, about what happens next." "There is no us, Rebecca." His voice held no malice, only certainty. "I'm married to Sarah now. We're happy." "You didn't tell me about the money." The accusation resurfaced, though weaker now. "All those years I struggled while you had millions." "The inheritance came the day you left," Lucas said. "The same day. But it wouldn't have mattered if you'd known." "Of course it would have." "No," Lucas interrupted gently. "It would have changed your behavior, not your values. You would have stayed for what I could provide, not for who I was. That's not love, Rebecca. That's transaction." She flinched as though struck. "I did love you, in my way." "I know, and I loved you in mine, but we wanted different things from life." Rebecca glanced past him toward the house. "Ethan hates me, doesn't he? He's hurt and confused. You've been absent from his daily life for years now. I want to be part of his life again, a real part." Lucas studied her face, searching for the authenticity he'd once known there. "That would require consistency, Rebecca. Being present even when it's inconvenient, loving him for who he is, not what he represents." "I can do that," she insisted, a hint of her old determination surfacing. "Then start small. Weekly dinners, school events, build trust gradually." Lucas removed an envelope from his pocket. "This contains the apartment information, a modest allowance for 6 months, and contact information for 3 job opportunities at companies unconnected to mine." Rebecca took the envelope, their fingers not quite touching across the barrier. "Why are you helping me after everything?" "Because Ethan loves you, even through his hurt. Because holding on to resentment serves no one. Because everyone deserves the chance to rebuild." "Will you ever open this gate, Lucas?" The question carried meaning beyond the physical barrier. Lucas looked at the woman who had once been the center of his world, who had broken his heart and inadvertently set him on a path to greater purpose. Some boundaries need to remain, Rebecca, not as punishment, but as protection for the life we've built. Tears welled in her eyes, recognition dawning of what she had truly lost, not wealth or status, but family and connection. "I understand," she whispered. As Rebecca turned to leave, Lucas called after her. "The foundation offers counseling services. I've included the information. It helps to have someone to talk to during rebuilding." She nodded, a small gesture of acknowledgement. Lucas watched her depart, the gate between them a necessary boundary rather than a wall of resentment. The true wealth in his life waited for him at home. A son who was growing into a thoughtful young man, a wife who loved with intention rather than condition, and a purpose that transformed personal pain into community healing. The gate remained closed, but his heart had long since opened to a richer understanding of what family truly meant. From the edge of the back porch, Lucas watched as Sarah and Ethan sat cross-legged on the lawn, heads bent together over a photo album. Golden evening light caught the matching bands on their hands, his wedding ring to Sarah, and the simple bracelet they'd given Ethan during their ceremony, symbol of their chosen family. 5 years since Rebecca had walked away. 5 years of rebuilding, reinventing, and rediscovering what truly mattered. The mechanics' hands that had once fixed engines now built businesses, homes, and community programs. Yet their most important work had been mending the broken places in his and Ethan's hearts, not by erasing the damage, but by carefully building something new around the fractures. True wealth, Lucas had discovered, was never measured in bank balances. The inheritance that had arrived the day Rebecca left had merely been a tool, not the treasure itself. The real fortune was in the authentic connections forged through difficulty, the support group members who had become friends, the community that had grown around the foundation's work, and most profoundly, the family created through choice rather than obligation. Sarah looked up, catching his gaze, her smile a quiet confirmation of their shared journey. Beside her, Ethan laughed at some discovered memory, the sound unburdened by the anxieties that had once plagued him. Life's greatest wisdom often came through its deepest wounds. In losing what he thought he wanted, Lucas had found what he truly needed. In facing betrayal, he had discovered compassion. In establishing boundaries, he had found freedom. The gate remained closed to Rebecca, not from bitterness, but from the recognition that some relationships required distance to be healthy. Yet the possibility of healing remained, for her, for Ethan, for all of them, in different forms than they had once imagined. "Dad," Ethan called, "come see this picture of us fishing." Lucas moved toward them, toward the family that had been built rather than born. In the gathering twilight, their laughter carried a promise that transcended circumstance, that from life's broken places, new beginnings could always emerge.